Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break, but especially I hope you're ready for our first in-person keynote speaker of YHS 2022, Mr. David Bosshart. Mr. Bosshart will be speaking about his philosophy and vision on the future trends of hospitality. So please join me in welcoming Mr. David Bosshart to the stage. Mr. Bosshart, how are you doing today?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big honor and a big pleasure to be among you. Listen, in 1970, the most important book and the most famous book about the future came out. It sold 7 or 8 million copies. Read it today, and astonishingly, you think it was written just right now. Very funny. Why is it still great? It's much more than just a book about change and about technology. It is how humans adapt to rapid change. And it is about human behavior and about decision making. And the message is very simple. If we have too fast-paced change, we are adapting inappropriately. So the speed of change is very important, whether we are willing and we are capable of adapting. Why? We humans are simple, we humans are slow, so if the pace is too fast, we run into certain challenges. In 1970, ladies and gentlemen, Alvin Toffler, the author, said, or he foresaw already the smart devices without naming it. He said, we are going to have we are going to live in a plastic-wrapped instant society with a buy now button. He talked about artificial intelligence, machines making our lives faster. He talked about the fact that we no longer know whether we speak to a human or an intelligent robot at an airline counter or at the hotel reception. He talked about duplicated man and genetic engineering. He talked also about loneliness and the strong need for a sense of belonging. He talked about group marriage and corporate marriage, very strange things, in 1970. And he talked about less durability and that everything is going to have an expiry date, like our credit cards. In 2013, my dear old friend Douglas Rushkoff wrote another great book, Present Shock, meaning that the future is no longer a distant that now comes in waves or innovation waves. It is that the future is already here. It collapsed in the present. The future is already here, like William Gibson said, but it is very unevenly distributed depending on where you live on planet Earth. Why is there a big difference? Today, everything seems connected to everything else. So we live in a fully connected and interconnected world that has no more an outside. So basically, we can say we live inside, and inside means we are living inside our iPhones. There is no more outside. Everything is connected to everything else. Think of the brutal war right now. The oil price is connected to the fertilizer price, is connected to the food price, is connected, of course, to transportation cost, is connected to inflation, is connected to propaganda news. We are all inside one machine, one iPhone. I would argue that today we are in between something. We are in an age of transition for the next 2 years. And what we need as humans is a fair balance between fear and hope. It's very important because we as humans will see over the next years more boosts. We see a lot of busts. We see ins and outs, very fast paced, much more experimentation than the 2 previous years we already experienced. But we humans are people of fear and we are people of hope. We need always a situation where hope is stronger than fear. On one side, hope means staying active, staying optimistic, fear of losing, staying optimistic and improving one's life. But there is also fear, inevitably, losing one's integrity, losing a relative, losing one's life even, losing a job, losing one's health. No fear is also no good. A little bit fear makes you stronger because then you listen to your gut feeling and you listen to your colleagues and you learn more than when you have no fear at all. But too much fear is counterproductive. So too much fear always is a danger and we should avoid it dramatically. So let's look at very simple quadrants and axes. What can we influence as human beings? So you see, it is important that you start with the lower right quadrant to start with. This is what I call the anti-negative quadrant. Anti-negative means influenceable, but fear. This means it's all about prevention. You circle your life around prevention. You avoid something negative that might occur. You save money for the future. You subscribe to an insurance policy for healthcare, or you react to certain future danger. But more importantly, of course, is the upper right quadrant, meaning the intersection between hope and what you can influence. So this is the proactive part. This is where you master what you do. This is where you are an entrepreneur. You're willing to take certain risks. You invest in the future. You have a dream you want to achieve. This is very important in these dramatically changing times. So proactive, more important than anti-negative, but prevention, anti-negative, is the basis of our lives. Never underestimate hope heals. Think about the placebo effect that is very well researched. Hope releases a lot of positive energy in us. We know we can influence ourselves positively. We know very well that from medical advice and from therapies. The most important precondition for a placebo effect is the following: the patient must get the feeling that the drug is going to be efficient. And here are the following astonishing facts. Big pills are more efficient than small ones. It doesn't make sense, but it works. Capsules are better than pills. It doesn't make sense, but it works. Multicolor ones are better than white ones. Doesn't make sense, but it works. And the injections are more effective than drops. Think about that too. And add this insight, the physician, but you can also say the hotelier, plays a key role. The more convincingly he promises a cure, the more effective a placebo is. But also working clothes and medical instruments can provide a sense of competence and security. So we must think as hoteliers about actively influencing the future. What do we need? We are witnessing right now a crisis of representation and imagination. I think the Netherlands author Rutger Bregman, great person, said it perfectly. The crisis of our times is not that we don't have it good, or even that we might be worse off in the near future. It's that we don't have the imagination to come up with anything better. That's the clue, I think. Hope helps. We also need strong imagination. Our power to imagine something radically different is lousily developed. I did dozens of, probably hundreds of workshops about the future of something. Take the future of a car. We can only imagine something we extrapolate from the past, or we optimize from the past. We think in terms of car, more horsepower, more miles for 1 liter of gas, or simply a better entertainment system. But no one imagined Tesla. It was there, and is now killing lots of parts of the traditional market for cars. Then ask yourself, what do you really, really believe in? Very important. The saying goes like that: faith moves mountains. Not necessarily something like religious faith, but just your deep conviction. Please evaluate any kind of trends that affects the hospitality industry only after having checked in depth what you really, really deeply believe in. Humans want to believe in something. Look at what you really believe and what makes you tick. So no data, no facts, no figures will change your opinion if you deeply are convinced of something. So take the 3 economists example. If you are convinced that the next catastrophe is coming anyway, why should you invest? You just let things go. You're becoming a cynicist. Or if you think that you just have to print money, central banks can print money, you have no fear of a coming inflation. You act very differently. You invest very differently. You don't save money anymore. Or many of the younger generation think only Greta Thunberg can help us protect the environment. You have deep convictions. You believe that you are right. So we can put it in a list with clear distinctions. I think that helps a little bit to better understand what I mean. We have doers, we have knowers, we have wanters, and we have believers. Who is best prepared for the future? I would argue we need all 4. But the lower you go, the more important it becomes. Doers just do it. It's fine. Knowers just know a lot, it's fine. It's about skills, it's about tools. These are the basics. But more important in times of crisis is we need wanters. Wanters are people who deeply want something, a person who doesn't conform, who wants more than what he has already achieved. That's very rare. It needs a lot of courage also. And ambitious, and being ambitious, and to believe something, strongly believe that your brand is stronger than anyone else's brand. Take a moderate person like Tim Cook from Apple, probably the best businessman until now of this century. He is convinced, just doing the right thing, very calmly, but very consistently, and with very clear determination. He believes that the brand is very strong. So for the future, we need also wanters and believers, and that means strong imagination and strong nerves. Think Satoshi, the mysterious founder of Bitcoin, or think Elon Musk. They had strong nerves and strong imagination against any kind of market research, politicians, or any kind of advice they got from consultants. Strong imagination alone doesn't make it. Strong nerves alone doesn't make it. The worst case is weak imagination and weak nerves. Then you become an imitator, you become a copycat, and you're driven by herd behavior. This is the most dangerous way to do business, because then you're in the middle of a price war. So strong imagination and strong nerves is the best way to approach future. Now imagine always the impossible when you think of the next generation of hotels, because the impossible statistically becomes more possible than ever. Even with 1% chance that something happens over 10, 15 years, it goes up exponentially, like war, like crime, like hackers. So what is a hotel then in 2030? You can go to the axis on one side, fully automated, or is it fully analog? These are the two extremes. Is it a place to be socialized, a socializer, or a place to be left alone? Is it something that is in competition with Airbnb 5 years from now or not? Is it in competition with WeWork 5 years from now or no, or not? We don't know yet. Then think deeply about how you name a customer. Do you address a customer as a user, like all the techies? Then you're just for convenience. Do you call your customer consumers as they consume food, they consume services? Do you call them guests to treat them well? Do you call them friend to provide more intimacy when you interact with them? I recommend 10 years from now, we just call our guests humans. We want to deal with human beings, not with robots, not with machines, not with just techie guys, not just with users. Think also about eating patterns. We often ask, when do we eat? What do we eat? Where do we eat? But I think the most important question will be, how do we eat in the coming years? Also, when you look at the time we spend with eating, breakfast, brunch, lunch, afternoon snack, dinner, supper, midnight snack, or you upgrade breakfast with a breakfast dessert. So this means we are going to redefine all our eating patterns over the next year. For sure, the next generation of hotels will be more expensive, better differentiated, and much more humane than it used to be until now. Ask yourselves, what is now, right now, about to peak? And what does that mean when something peaks? When there is no more frictionless travel, what does that mean? When the freedom to be, to go wherever you want is no longer available, even not for billionaires. If you're a Russian billionaire, you no longer can go wherever you want. So it's changing a lot. Peak regular work. We have no longer an abundance of qualified people. Peak staff. Staff, again, is going to move towards scarcity. 51 nations already have just 51 countries, meaning a fourth of all nations, have a declining workforce already. What does that mean when you're looking for qualified people? So I recommend always to look at the long-term trend, know also history when you approach the future. So I recommend to see the most important long-term trend, which is that we are becoming cavemen again. We are becoming basically purely an indoor species. This has to do with climate change. COVID taught us that we are going there, and of course, war also brings us in a situation where we desperately seek retreats, places of relief, where we feel at home, where we feel safe, because the reality outside is indifferent to us. It doesn't care about my soul. Very important. So we are living in the half-dark of caves, in the twilight of our machines, our devices, flashy devices, like in a permanent cinema state. Only the courageous people, the entrepreneurs, those who are the wanters and the believers with strong imagination and strong nerves are going outside the cave and changing the world outside. We are living in a generation indoor. The facts are very clear. 90% in the Western world of time spent is indoor. In the US, as a leader, it's 93%. Climate change is an important factor, of course, but also when you look at big cities, Madrid, Paris, over the last 3 decades, agglomerations, suburbs, and the city got many degrees warmer due to congestion, due to more traffic, due to steel, concrete, due to much more people living in small spaces together. This means the interior design, our internal lives, become more important, so the design of our soul and our mind is probably the most important thing we can do as someone who receives human beings. We see also two monopolies. One is the platforms and the clouds. Think of Amazon, think of Google, think of Microsoft, and the rest is concrete. But construction is also going down, not only going up. When you see more is now under the surface. 3D is replacing 2D lives with narrow focus on street and rail. So it is much more holistic 3D lives everywhere. And as we are entering the metaverse, we are adding not only two monopolies, we are adding within the cloud and platform monopoly another layer, which is the metaverse. Think of all the shopping malls, underground shopping malls in Toronto, think Singapore, but also I learned that from a wealth manager. He told me that half of the billionaires have invested in underground homes due to the fear of global warming, cyber war, atomic war, and terrorism. So look at where the richest people invest. So we see three spaces coming now. One, I mentioned just, the earthly space. Then we have the platforms and the cloud spaces of the internet, where we buy a lot of things and order things. But the Web3 is now coming very fast. So this will be a metaverse, a world of socializing in games, speculating on virtual real estate, working in virtual offices, use digital currencies and digital art. This will be a fully immersive world. When we look at the macro level to sum that all, we can say we are witnessing over the next years the end of seasonality as we know it. We are becoming more indoor people. Retreat in different kinds of caves are becoming more important. The mental mood is challenged, so we need a very good interior design for our souls. How we create spaces is becoming more important. Windows, how we create windows to the world in our caves. Balconies in a hotel are becoming more important. Terraces, gardens, a party in the fresh air is becoming much more valuable than anything you might imagine until now. Also, just to give you a list, I will not go into details looking at the clock. Think of my list of super important buzzwords. People are living longer. We have now a 100-year life mentality. In Japan, the gerontological society says over 75 people are silently moving to an older age. Ageless means we are defining our age by experience quality. More people of the 100 can still experience a lot of athleticism. Solo living is a trend. When you look at alone together is a status symbol in the modern world. More restaurants are having table for one, dinner for one, you're going to eat alone. But the biggest challenge is between aging societies and birthing societies, meaning the older worlds, like the West, like Japan, like South Korea, but China also, are going to be worlds where people want memories. Whereas the younger, the birthing nations, like many countries in Africa, they want a dream. This is completely different. So to some we can say Long term, I'm very optimistic, especially for the European tourism and hospitality business. We need in some four visions, broadly and simplified said, coastal, urban and alpine, and we need an enhanced vision. What the hell does the metaverse for the hospitality industry mean? Very important, underrated, because this is a project for the next 20 years. Europe is still l'art de vivre. We have the biggest slice of aspirational global luxury markets. We have in France la séduction as the business model. Europe has great museums, and we have a good basis of stories to tell about the future. And add to that football, when you look, a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo has over 340 million followers on the whole earth on Instagram. For me, the most important thing is when we look to the alpine world, the only and ultimate luxury we are going to have is a moderate climate, air quality, sense of freshness, morning coolness, touching water, smell the smell of snowfall. Can you make an unforgettable experience out of that? So the ultimate luxury 10, 15 years from now will be having a lunch with friends on a hotel terrace or in a mountain restaurant. Coming to the end, this is my favorite list. It's just a personal list of recommendations based on my hotel experiences. I think first, most importantly, a hotelier is responsible for someone who creates a social event. Life is more the art of clever repetition. You repeat over and over again what you like to do. Having dinner, having sex, meeting with friends. Try to give a twist to all these experiences. It's not the endless new thing. The better experience means also coming home with joy. Good arrival always is slow. Go for a longer stay. The further away, the longer the stay should be. When you look at urban tourism, urban hotels, you can't fix the city as long as the souls are a mess. So a hotel reflects our inner emotions and our mental state. Tribes of different kinds will determine the coming years. Regular customers will be more appreciated, but here comes my clue. Regular customers need regular stuff. I think regular great stuff is the future. And the last point, be clever and avoid TripAdvisor, Google, Booking, Booking.com et al. You deserve better. In sum, hospitality of tomorrow will be very human-centered, very humane. It will be more differentiated, but the prices are going up. But it will be less a commodity and more appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bosshart. That was a fantastic keynote. I hope you're ready for some questions. Our first question is, GDI sent lorries full of food to villages in the countryside. Vendors brought not only goods, but also information and networking between towns and countries. From your point of view, how great is the thirst and hunger of people in the city and in the countryside, and thus in our society for genuine listening?
Is this my question?
That's your question.
Well, I think that hunger is something that comes back, very sadly. But people genuinely have to cover the basics. Then you think of the Maslow pyramid. But basically, humans are socializing people. They want fun. They want jokes. So humor plays an important role. When you look at the president of Ukraine, very interestingly, he is a comedian. I think someone who still has, in the strongest moment of your life, never loses the sense of humor. I think then you're really not just a leader, then you're a great leader.
Thank you, Mr. Bosshart. For our last question, could you give examples of how a metaverse could be integrated into hospitality?
I think it is an evolution. I highly recommend to those who have a little bit money to invest, just invest 1% of your money you have available just to learn. I learned to go in many games. I watch closely what's going on. I'm not the guy who does these games. I'm not willing to invest $10,000s just to have a room next to a celebrity. But I think this is pure imagination. And I think imagination is the future. And when you go back to one of the greatest American entrepreneur, Walt Disney, he said, when you can understand the imagination of the young, of the kids, meaning stories, create a world, then you win their mind. And I think imagination is something, you can also say it is a retreat, like to a cave. But I think people in a world that is becoming more dangerous, more unsafe, more insecure, people want those fancy and stability guaranteeing, even if it's an illusion. They want an environment where they can have fun, where they can play, and where they can be well entertained. And when people have less chance to travel, so this is an escape that might help to even look much more forward to the real analog experience in the next time they can really travel by train, by car, or by plane. So for me, it will really be a very different experience when we go out. And when we go out, the farther away we go, the longer we should stay to really get the feeling this is something special, not just a commodity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bosshart. It was a pleasure having you here at YHS 2022 for our first in-person keynote speaker for the past 3 years. Truly a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Thank you
So
very
up
much.
next, we have a break, so we'll see you back here after the break.